The rise and fall of Cadbury's, from British pride to American greed. It's a story that starts with religious chocolate makers creating a workers' paradise and ends with corporate raiders dismantling a national treasure. Did you know that in 2010, when the Americans took over Cadbury, they promised to keep the English Somerdale factory open, only to announce its closure just 6 days after the deal was sealed? But here's what most people don't realise. The seeds of Cadbury's destruction were actually planted decades earlier. This isn't just about chocolate bars getting smaller or recipes changing. It's about how a company that literally built utopian villages for its workers became another casualty of globalized capitalism, leaving us with nothing but purple-wrapped nostalgia and a bitter aftertaste. Let's start our story, not at the beginning, but in the 1970s, when Cadbury was already transforming from the Quaker family business into something unrecognizable. By 1973, just 4 years after merging with Schweppes, the company culture had shifted dramatically. The Bournville factory, once a model of paternalistic capitalism, was becoming just another production facility focused on efficiency metrics and profit margins. Former employees from this era describe a palpable change in atmosphere, where once there had been a sense of family, quite literally with multiple generations working side by side, there was now talk of synergies and restructuring. The experimental kitchens that had produced innovations like Flake, 1920, and Crunchy, 1929, were now under pressure to deliver products that could be mass-produced cheaply across multiple markets. The irony was striking. A company founded by Quakers who believed commerce should serve society was now serving shareholders who'd never set foot in Birmingham. This tension between heritage and profit would define Cadbury's next 4 decades, ultimately leading to its downfall. Now, before we dive deeper into the corporate machinations, and trust me, there's plenty more to come about how private equity thinking infected this British institution, let's understand how this chocolate empire actually began. John Cadbury wasn't just any shopkeeper, he was a Quaker with a mission. In 1824, Birmingham was a grimy industrial hellhole where the working class drowned their sorrows in gin. Cadbury, being a teetotaler who believed alcohol was the devil's work, opened his shop at 93 Bull Street selling tea, coffee and drinking chocolate as healthy alternatives. Not the powder we know today, mind you, but a fatty, gritty concoction that was essentially ground cocoa beans mixed with potato starch and sago flour. Appetizing, I know. The real revolution came with John's sons, Richard and George, who took over in 1861 when the business was actually failing. The company was hemorrhaging money, down to just 20 employees, and their father had essentially given up, retiring due to ill health. But these brothers had something special. They discovered Van Houten's Dutch process for extracting cocoa butter from beans, creating what they branded as cocoa essence in 1866. This was proper innovation. Pure cocoa powder without all the additives their competitors were shoving in. Here's what made them different. Victorian-era food adulteration was rampant. Competitors were adding all sorts of dubious ingredients to bulk out their cocoa. Flour, starches, even rumours of brick dust for colouring. The Cadbury brothers seized on purity as their unique selling point, advertising absolutely pure, therefore best. It was marketing genius, wrapped in Quaker morality. By 1879, business was booming enough that the brothers moved their factory from central Birmingham to what would become Bournville, then just countryside 4 miles south of the city. But the model village you've heard about, that didn't start until 1893, when George Cadbury began his grand social experiment. This wasn't just a factory with some houses tacked on. This was an attempt to solve Victorian Britain's housing crisis. George personally planned the village with architect William Alexander Harvey. Every house had a garden, at least 1/6 of an acre, because George believed working families needed space to grow their own food and flowers. There were wide tree-lined roads, parks and recreational facilities, but famously, no pubs, not one. George believed that decent homes and wholesome entertainment would eliminate the need for alcohol. The village had strict rules that seem bizarre today. Residents couldn't keep chickens, too noisy, had to maintain their gardens to specific standards, and faced regular inspections. Women workers were required to leave employment when they married. Standard practice then, but particularly enforced at Bournville. They even provided compulsory swimming lessons for female employees, with George convinced that physical fitness was essential for moral health. By 1900, Bournville housed 313 cottages and houses in 330 acres. The Cadburys introduced revolutionary employment practices, one of the first companies to give workers Saturday afternoons off, bank holidays with pay and medical services. They established workers' committees in 1918, early workplace democracy that gave employees a voice in factory decisions. The year 1905 changed everything. Cadbury launched dairy milk with more milk content than any competitor. The purple wrapper came much later, actually becoming the trademark colour in 1914, chosen simply because it stood out on shelves and suggested luxury. The famous Pantone 2685C wasn't officially trademarked until the 1990s. The marketing was revolutionary for its time. The glass and a half of milk slogan appeared in 1928, literally showing milk pouring into chocolate chunks. Simple, memorable, and it communicated the key differentiator. By 1913, dairy milk had overtaken Fry's chocolate cream as Britain's best-selling chocolate bar. During World War I, Cadbury sent tons of chocolate to troops, creating special high-energy emergency rations designed not to melt. The company also quietly converted parts of Bournville to munitions production, making gas masks and aircraft parts while maintaining chocolate production. This dual identity was downplayed in later company histories. The interwar period brought iconic products: Flake, 1920, cream-filled eggs, 1923, Crunchy, 1929, and Roses, 1938. The famous Roses twist wrappers were a practical innovation, making chocolates easy to open with one hand, perfect for passing around. World War II nearly destroyed Cadbury. Cocoa beans couldn't get through naval blockades and sugar was strictly rationed. Cadbury created Ration Chocolate, a government-contracted bar with minimal cocoa, supplemented with oats and dried milk powder. It kept the nation's morale up, even if it barely qualified as chocolate. Remarkably, Cadbury kept all their workers employed throughout the war, converting production lines to make airplane parts, gas masks, and minesweeper equipment. The Bournville factory was bombed in November 1940, killing workers and destroying buildings, but production resumed within days. Post-war recovery brought innovation born from scarcity. The 1948 launch of picnic bars used whatever ingredients were available. The 1950s saw dairy milk tray boxes positioned as romantic gifts, leading to those legendary Man in Black advertisements starting in 1968, showing a mysterious figure delivering chocolates through increasingly absurd stunts. Here we reach 1969, the pivotal year. Cadbury merged with Schweppes to form Cadbury Schweppes, creating what they hoped would be a British food and drinks giant capable of competing internationally. This wasn't a hostile takeover. Both boards agreed it was necessary for survival against American multinationals, but the family's influence immediately diluted. Adrian Cadbury, one of the last family board members, later revealed his private opposition to the merger. The Quaker values that had defined the company for 145 years now competed with quarterly earnings reports and shareholder demands. The 1970s and 80s saw aggressive expansion. Cadbury Schweppes acquired drinks brands globally: Canada Dry, Dr. Pepper, 7-Up outside the US. By 1986, they were the world's third largest soft drinks company. But chocolate innovations suffered as investment poured into beverages. Bournville workers noticed the difference: fewer new products, less experimentation, more focus on extending existing brands. The company also began moving production abroad. In 1967, they'd opened the Somerdale factory near Bristol. Through the 1980s, factories opened in Poland, India, and China. The rationale was accessing new markets, but it also meant cheaper labour and less stringent regulations. By 2008, shareholders forced a demerger. Cadbury plc was reborn as an independent confectionery company, and initially things looked promising. Todd Stitzer, the American CEO, promised to balance heritage with growth, launching the Purple Goes Green campaign with fair trade dairy milk in 2009, making it the first mainstream chocolate brand to achieve fair trade certification in Britain and Ireland. Marketing reconnected with British humour through the famous 2007 drumming gorilla advertisement and airport flash mobs. But behind the creative campaigns, cost-cutting was brutal. The Somerdale factory was earmarked for closure, with production shifting to Poland. The dairy milk recipe was adjusted to meet international taste preferences. Corporate speak for adding more sugar and reducing cocoa content, as, most controversially, vegetable fats began supplementing cocoa butter in certain products. While Cadbury insisted their main lines remained unchanged, workers noticed the texture and melting point of chocolate changing. Quality control standards that had been sacred were now guidelines. January 19th, 2010. Kraft Foods launched its hostile takeover bid, initially offering £10.2 billion. Cadbury's board, led by Chairman Roger Carr, rejected it as derisory. The British public was horrified. Gordon Brown's government expressed serious concerns. Cadbury workers protested. Media campaigns portrayed this as American corporate raiders attacking a British institution. Kraft returned with £11.5 billion. Behind closed doors, institutional shareholders, particularly hedge funds who'd bought shares specifically to profit from a takeover, pressured the board to accept. On February 2nd, 2010, Kraft secured 71.73% of shares. The broken promise came immediately. During the takeover battle, Kraft explicitly stated they would keep Somerdale factory open. 6 days after completion, just 6 days, they announced its closure with the loss of 400 jobs. Irene Rosenfeld, Kraft's CEO, later told a parliamentary committee she regretted the misunderstanding but claimed the closure decision had been made before they knew about it. Nobody believed her. What followed was systematic dismantling. Within Kraft, later split to become Mondelez International in 2012, Cadbury became just another brand to be optimised. Production moved to Poland, where labour costs were 80% lower. The Bournville workforce shrank from 3,000 to under 1,500 through efficiency improvements, automation and redundancies. Recipe changes accelerated. Independent analysis confirmed cocoa content decreased while sugar increased. Vanilla flavouring replaced real vanilla. Palm oil appeared in ingredient lists. The cream egg controversy of 2015. When dairy milk chocolate was replaced with standard cocoa mixed chocolate, caused sales to drop immediately, but profit margins improved. Product sizes shrank through right-sizing. The standard dairy milk bar went from 49 grams to 45 grams, while prices remained static. Fingers became noticeably thinner. Selection boxes contained fewer chocolates. They weren't even subtle about it. The financial engineering was breathtaking. Mondelez shifted Cadbury's intellectual property to a subsidiary in Switzerland, allowing them to charge the UK operation licensing fees that conveniently wiped out UK profits. Between 2010 and 2017, Cadbury UK paid just £5.7 million in corporation tax, despite generating hundreds of millions in revenue. Meanwhile, they collected £6 million in government grants for maintaining British manufacturing at Bournville. The company that once built schools and hospitals was now taking taxpayer money while avoiding taxes. The workforce devastation went beyond numbers. Entire departments disappeared overnight. The experimental chocolate laboratory, the quality assurance team that had operated since 1905, the apprenticeship program that had trained 5 generations of chocolatiers. In 2014, Mondelez outsourced Cadbury's entire UK logistics operation to DHL, making 700 more workers redundant. They even sold off the fleet of purple delivery trucks, iconic vehicles that had been touring Britain since the 1950s, replaced by generic white vans. The pension scheme, once one of Britain's most generous, was closed to new members in 2011 and frozen for existing members in 2013. Blind taste tests tell the story, which, Magazine's 2015 comparison found modern dairy milk consistently rated lower than pre-takeover samples that collectors had preserved. Descriptors included waxy, synthetic, and cloying sweetness. Former quality controllers risk legal action to speak truth. One 30-year veteran told researchers, "We used to reject batches that would easily pass today. It's about meeting minimum standards now, not excellence." The cultural misunderstanding showed in failed products: Dairy Milk Oreo, Philadelphia cheese chocolate, Dairy Milk Ritz, American combinations that horrified British palates. Meanwhile, traditional favourites like Whisper Gold, Dream Bars and original recipe creme eggs disappeared. The numbers speak volumes. In 2010, dairy milk contained 30% cocoa solids. By 2015, independent testing found it down to 23% in some batches, though Mondelez disputed this. The sugar content increased from 56 grams per 100 grams to 59 grams. Most damning, the cocoa butter content, the expensive ingredient that gives chocolate its melt-in-the-mouth quality, dropped by an estimated 12%. They replaced it with cheaper vegetable fats like palm and shea, fundamentally changing the texture. Consumer complaints to the Food Standards Agency about Cadbury products increased 230% between 2010 and 2016. Sales data showed British consumers voting with their wallets. Cadbury's UK market share dropped from 71% in 2010 to 63% by 2018, with premium brands like Hotel Chocolat and artisan makers capturing the lost ground. Even the creme egg debacle had measurable impact. After the recipe change, sales dropped £6 million in the first year alone. Mondelez's response? They made the eggs smaller and sold them in packs of 5 instead of 6, maintaining the price point while reducing costs by 20%. Today's Bournville village remains physically intact, now conservation protected and containing properties worth millions. The factory still operates, but it's largely automated. The social infrastructure the Cadburys built, sports clubs, education programs, community events, exists only in memory. The Cadbury Experience visitor attraction charges £19 for adults to tour a sanitised version of history. The gift shop sells Polish-made chocolate at premium prices. Former workers describe visiting as paying to see your own family's grave. The 2017 announcement of £75 million investment in Bournville sounded impressive until you realised it was primarily automation technology that would further reduce the workforce. They kept the Cadbury name and purple branding because market research showed British consumers still associated it with quality, despite mounting evidence to the contrary. The real tragedy shows in the employment figures. In 2010, Bournville employed 2,800 people directly and supported another 5,000 jobs in the local supply chain. By 2020, direct employment had fallen to just 1,200, with most being machine operators and logistics staff rather than skilled chocolatiers. The average wage dropped from £32,000 in 2010 to £24,000 in 2020, adjusted for inflation, as skilled positions were replaced with minimum wage roles. The community impact was devastating. The Bournville Works Athletic Club, founded in 1902, closed in 2013. The Cadbury's Angels, the women's football team that won 5 league titles, disbanded. The annual Bournville Festival, which had run since 1905 and attracted 30,000 visitors, ended in 2012. Even the famous Cadbury's Christmas parties for workers' children, a tradition since 1891, were cancelled as a cost-saving measure. The Roeheath Pavilion, built by Cadbury for the community in 1924, was sold to property developers in 2016. Today, former Cadbury workers run food banks in the same streets where the company once guaranteed jobs for life and dignity in retirement. Visit Bournville today and you'll find the Cadbury Research Library at the University of Birmingham, preserving archives that document when business had conscience. The Bournville Village Trust, established by George Cadbury in 1900, still manages the village and maintains its character, though it's now primarily heritage preservation rather than social innovation. The Cadbury family maintains charitable work through various trusts and foundations, continuing Quaker traditions of social responsibility. But it's a fraction of what the company once contributed directly to society. The saddest part A generation now exists that knows only modern Cadbury chocolate. They've never tasted bars made with fresh milk from British dairy farms, chocolate tempered by craftsmen who took pride in perfection. They don't know about workers who stayed with the company for life because it treated them like family, not human resources. What we're left with is a cautionary tale about selling heritage to the highest bidder. Cadbury wasn't just a chocolate company. It was proof that business could have conscience, that treating workers well was profitable, that companies could build communities rather than destroying them. The purple wrapper remains, but what's inside represents everything wrong with modern capitalism. Quality sacrificed for margins, heritage sold for quarterly earnings, and communities abandoned for cheaper alternatives. We didn't just lose a chocolate company, we lost a model for how business could be different. So next time you unwrap a dairy milk, you're tasting the remnants of a British dream that was melted down and recast into American corporate profits. The rise and fall of Cadbury's isn't just about confectionery. It's about how we allowed financial engineering to defeat social engineering. How we let those who know the price of everything and the value of nothing buy our industrial heritage. If this story of chocolate-coated corporate greed has left you hungry for more tales of British businesses, bought, stripped and destroyed by international megacorporations, then hit that subscribe button faster than Kraft broke their promises to Parliament. Ring the notification bell like it's the last shift at Somerdale factory. And join us as we uncover more stories of how Britain's industrial heritage got auctioned off to the highest bidder. Because if we don't remember what we've lost, we're doomed to keep selling what little remains. Subscribe now. Unlike Cadbury's recipes, our content will never get watered down.